Today we're visiting with Myla Tscheschke. She is a longtime member of Hope United Methodist Church. She's also been active and involved with the Parents' Day Out program, the preschool here at the church. So she's going to tell us some of her memories and her involvement here at Hope. Myla, tell us, how did you first hear about this church?
I lived in Aurora at the time, and we would come across the dam, and my group of friends, childcare friends, said that, oh yeah, there's a church meeting at the school, and so I had known that they were at Mission Viejo and that they were at the school, so that's how I started attending, crossing the dam from our little house.
Well, you've been a member since November the 12th of 1978.
So that's quite a while.
Yes, almost 40 years.
I was thinking 30, but...
Let's go with 30. Did you attend some of the worship at the school?
I did for a couple weeks, maybe more.
Yeah.
The most important thing about and why I wanted to join is that we always had a prayer circle, and we at the end of the service, and we had a prayer circle, and that kind of caught my attention, and then we moved to this building.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I believe the tradition of joining hands at the end of the service started at the school.
And it still continues,
Yes.
of sorts.
Yes.
It's not totally everyone together, but
Yeah.
because of the way the building is.
Right. Well, what do you remember about worshiping at the school?
I remember that we had to move chairs a lot if we had the Sunday school or if we were in worship. I remember we had to move the chairs into whatever we needed for that. And I also remember Barbara Lair being director of the choir.
Yes.
I was not at the choir then, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, Bob Cole was the first pastor over at the school. Do you remember him?
I don't actually as much.
No?
I do remember more in this building. So, and the first shovel that we did for this building, I think it's hanging up in the wall up there.
I believe so.
And I remember we had to place wooden planks so that people could have a dry place to stand when we did that particular event.
Yep.
Because it was pretty muddy around here.
Yes, it was literally a vacant lot, and
It
the
was.
drainage wasn't very good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you remember the first building, which we now call Schult Fellowship Hall.
Yes.
How did that work?
It was wonderful in the fact that we were actually in a building and didn't have to quite as move chairs as much. Maybe we
Right.
still needed to move chairs.
Right.
And I do remember the cross that hung in Fellowship Hall, Reverend Schultz's place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Al Brown and Victor Schult were the pastors at that time. Do you remember those pastors?
I do. Victor actually came. He loved to visit people,
Yes.
so he came to visit us at our home, and he was sure that I had a service for the church I have a home organ, and he was sure that I had a place. I do not play. I sing, but my passion is dance. So he was sure that I was going to play somewhere, but I have not.
Well, I think Victor was instrumental in a lot of longtime members coming and being here. He was terrific at visitation.
And his dear wife, Ruth.
Yes.
They were a special couple and always will be. Yeah.
Yeah. And you remember Al Brown?
Well, Al Brown I remember the most. One service that I did helped with. We had flowers. And we had a big board, a big wire board, and we were to put flowers in the board, and I don't remember as much of the service as I remembering, well, the flowers are going to wilt.
Oh.
And I was sad about that. So I didn't repeat that exercise because I was really sad that the flowers were going to wilt and they needed a place for beyond just the service.
Yes. Well, you mentioned that we didn't really have any offices in that first building, and
No, we didn't. So I went, there was a little kitchenette in the office, which was a kitchenette and office for Al Brown and others. So it came in and out, and I happened to be there, and I remember, I don't know, I was doing something probably for UMW or whatever, but I pulled out the silverware drawer, and it fell on my toe and I broke it. So Al Brown was certain that something needed to be changed, and so we had a bigger kitchen that is now the elevator. Maybe you can have 3 in there instead of just 1.
well, and you had some experience with those first 2 really small kitchens, preparing meals and helping with dinners.
Yes, in fact, several of us made aprons, and I don't remember what the saying was, but we had aprons of Hope's Cooks, and so we had quite a few dinners come out of that little kitchen.
Yeah. Well, Molly, you've been involved with the Parents' Day Out program here at the school. Can you tell us a little bit about how that works with the church, or how the church works with the Parents' Day Out program?
Well, I began to think that I should do something more than be just a volunteer, not just a volunteer, but a volunteer upstairs. So I joined Parents' Day Out and preschool staff, and I worked in the 2-year-olds for 22 years in the 2-year-old room, and I loved them. They were they brought me smiles every day.
Yes.
And I could mold them at 2-year-olds, where as they grew older, I maybe couldn't mold them as much. And
Yeah.
I remember my assistant making a mural. She loved to paint.
Mm-hmm.
And she made a mural downstairs in the 1-year-old room. I just dearly love that mural. I wish everyone could see it. So our Parents' Day Out program, as a staff, we would always have a prayer group after. We always started with a prayer before, and then we'd have a prayer group here in the afternoons. I don't know whether that's continued or not. But it involved the community, so we were not outreaching here at Hope, but outside to the community, and the parents were just really dear and really enjoyed us, and there were a few that joined the church because of Hope PDO and preschool.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you mentioned some of your pupils or grandchildren.
yes, there was the sergeants, and I've watched several children grow and always grow into adults, and that's been a real joy, and I like that connection to see them, and even now I have a high five buddy. I don't think she's in our preschool, but I have a high five buddy, and I'm going to continue that.
That's terrific.
So, yeah.
Well, tell me what the ages that are covered by the preschool.
The ages are from 1 and walking to pre-K, and we have the most classrooms at pre-K. And my first grandson was involved in PDO, so I like that carry on. Not able to now, but
Yes.
yeah.
Well, over 22 years of your service with PDO, you must have had several directors. Do you remember some of the directors?
Carol Davenport and Cindy McCready were the directors through all the growth in PDO, and now Robin is our director, and Every time I go downstairs, I peek into one of the rooms and give a high five, and there's always one that smiles and gives me a hug. I say that to the children. I say, well, I love hugs and I love to get them and give them. So quite often they'll come up and give me a hug as well.
Good for you. Well, you mentioned that the PDO is sort of an outreach for the community. You don't have to be a member of Hope to attend the pre-school.
No, you do not. It's mostly an outreach, and we, for years and years, we start our registration in February, and we get full, and there are wait lists. So I'm thankful for our directors that help start it and move forward to keep a good community preschool.
Many people have mentioned what a blessing it is for the community to have an outlet and a resource like that.
Yes.
Well, thank you for your work with all of that
Thank
for
you.
22 years. That's
Yeah.
good. Good for you.
And now I'm on to another mission.
Well, tell us a little bit about that, different aspects of the church that you've been involved in. You mentioned that you were in the choir at different times.
I've been in the choir mostly since I can remember. However, it's not been a continuous straight through. I enjoy the choir, but my big passion is dance. And I've also been on several committees, the trustees, long time ago, when our responsibility was to get sand for the PDO playground. And I remember even my husband and boys helping out with that. The mission team just recently, and I was on worship committee early on. And worship committee, I still think we don't cut, someone in the church actually went up to the mountains and cut down the big tree, brought it here so it was live. I don't think we have a live tree anymore, but I always look for the beautiful tree on the right side of the sanctuary, and I love it. And I also enjoy when it comes, I don't know that we had it last year, was the mitten tree, the mitten and
Yes.
hat tree
Yes.
that we have near our memorial gardens.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I remember
look
that,
forward to
and that those would be available for people who might need those.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that that'll continue, that we'll have another mission as such with mittens and hats for the homeless and whomever in need, because I know there's a great need out there.
I believe you also were involved in one of the missions to the homeless of providing socks for them.
This has been about 3-4 years maybe. I've lost count. UMW we get a pair of socks, tube socks, and then we fill it with the toiletries that people have gathered in the summer from their travels from hotels and such. And we fill that sock and give it to Grand Avenue Outreach. And that's really important to me. That's an important mission because I have a family member that would have been in need had I not stepped in, and so I know that the stories of the homeless can be a little difficult to
Yes.
some people, but some of it is absolutely, they are in need, and I'm thankful for those that help.
Well, thank you for your service with that too, Myla. Well, you mentioned that you have a passion for dance. Tell us a little bit about the liturgical dance.
I do. I dance. That's one of the reasons I retired from PDO, was because I began to dance 2 or 3 times a week with my husband, and I couldn't do that, and so I couldn't continue that. So but the dance, my passion has always been dance of some form. And I remember it was through the urging of Margaret Hankins and Marilyn Lesser that we have a dance worship. And it wasn't very long, but we did have a worship service. And so I took a class at ILEF through Margaret's urging, and it was on the curriculum. Liturgical dance was on the curriculum, and we formed a little team here, and we did a worship service, and Marilyn Lesser was helping us. I think she accompanied on the piano. I don't remember, but it was fun. It was fun. I don't know whether St. Andrews continues that. I do know there are some. So yeah.
Well, tell me how that plays in. You may have learned in this class how the liturgy and the dance is part of the worship. How does that?
I'm very much. I like liturgy. I don't like too much of non-liturgical services.
Right.
I really like the liturgy. I feel complete, and I can follow along in the liturgy, and so quite often when I'll hear a hymn or a song, I'll think in terms of movement rather than sitting still in a pew.
Well, after Al Brown and Victor Schultz was here, Richard Vickery came as a pastor. Do you remember Dr. Vickery?
Actually, Dr. Vickery was pretty special in my life because he was, my uncle knew him very well.
Oh, really?
And I think now he is in some kind of drama. I'm not sure, but in like Central City or some place like that. I hate to say when it's not necessarily. So yeah, Dr. Vickery was special. I do remember that every year he would say, "I'm talking on this topic, and so I'm letting you know that this is what I'm going to say," and so that was something that I could cue into. That okay, he had an opinion. He wasn't going to tell you his opinion unless asked, but on this particular day, he was going to.
Yes.
And so I always kept that in mind, that probably I should not say my opinion too loudly until appropriate time and I'm asked.
Sure. Well, after Dr. Vickery, Sam Day was the pastor here. Do you remember Sam
And
Day?
I had a connection with Sam Day because my home church, my parents, where I grew up, he was pastor at Fort Collins.
Oh, I see.
So that was special. I kind of had these connections in the UMW church. So it was good to know that someone familiar
Yes.
was helping us out.
Yep.
So yeah.
What are some of the things you remember about Sam Day?
I think Sam Day had 3 points. He always would have 3 points. And you could try, okay, 1, 2, 3. I got it, I think. Yeah.
Oh. Well, after Sam Day, Margaret Hankins was here. You mentioned that she had encouraged you to take a class at ILEF. What else do you remember about Margaret?
She was a special lady. She encouraged others to move into their direction as far as passion, and she wasn't necessarily the one that she delegated, so I was doing what I enjoyed, and she was special because after she came, I think it was Steve Miller.
Yes.
And he was really the one that helped us when our family was in real need.
Yeah.
So coming to the hospital.
Yeah. Well, Steve Miller was a co-pastor with Margaret for several years.
Right.
And at that time you had family issues where he helped you?
Yes, he did. And that meant a lot to me. That really meant a lot to me. I could, that he would come along with a priest. My husband is Catholic, and come and still be part of helping us through the situation. So.
That's great. Well, and John Lee was also a co-pastor here with Margaret before Steve Miller came. Do you remember John Lee?
I do, but I don't, it's kind of blending in. The
Yes.
pastors blend in. Every time there is transition, and you kind of go, oh, okay, another transition, but we'll kind of grow through this.
Yes. Yes.
So.
Well, you had mentioned Marilyn Lesser as an associate pastor here and was involved with the dance group. You remember other things about Marilyn?
When Marilyn was here, and the offices were in a trailer, I believe.
I think that's right.
And I was working downstairs, and we always wondered, where Marilyn was. But she had the gift of music, and her daughter was helping out at the church. I think her daughter and another friend even helped with the youth sometimes. And so I don't remember where my children were in that,
right.
But I do remember that her daughter said, oh yeah, I do remember Dan and Walt and Teresa. So.
We've also had some talented associate pastors that were ladies. You remember Marla Cowers?
I do. She worked, I'm drawing a blank. She was here kind of at the end of my, maybe not, at the end of my PDO.
With the PDO work?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I
Yeah,
remember
my
she
retirement.
led a 3 or 4 week program about identifying your gifts and your talents.
Oh, that's right. She
And-
did.
And she taught me that you don't have to volunteer for everything, that it's okay to
Not to.
say no.
To say
because
no,
that may
that's
not be your
true.
talent.
That may not be your talent.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. I believe that was, and we all filled out that sheet about generosity, and
Yes.
I don't remember what else was there, but yes, that was true.
Yeah.
That was important lessons for some
I
of
agree.
us.
I got a lot out of that. Well, recently we've had Stephanie Price here. We had some memories of Stephanie Price.
Stephanie and Don Byrne have been very special. I still am moving towards something new here, but Stephanie has helped my daughter when she was so ill, and with her 2 babies, and and the land is something exciting.
Yes,
I'm not,
yes.
exciting. I'm not sure where it will land, but it's wonderful to know that the growth is beyond just this building.
Yes. And it's kind of a neat thing, I think, that this church was started by a mission outreach from the Parker United Methodist Church.
Exactly.
And now Hope is reaching out to a community that's not even there yet.
That's not even there.
With the land, that 10, 15, 20 years from now, there will be a church presence when that neighborhood is developed. And Stephanie, I think, is a good resource for that.
Yes. Yes.
Tell us what else you remember about Don Bird.
Don he came from Fort Collins. What do I say? I grew up in Fort Collins. And so I must say, I loved his prayers, that he was very connected to prayer, and that he would even have our dear Ann Mangleson come every morning and have prayer before the service started. I attempted to do that, but I must say I did not fall. I fell short because I like to talk and be involved. And so I pray at home every morning. I'm on the prayer list and the prayer team, and that is something that I regularly do, and I must say that that's the one thing that I'll remember from him. But I have another connection because our group dances at Broomfield,
Where Don is now.
where Don is now.
Yes.
So I don't know what it is about UMC connections, but we're out there.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah, it is.
Well, tell us a little bit more about the prayer group. You had mentioned before we started this that my grandson Hunter was on the prayer team or on the prayer list, and you and others had remembered him in your prayers. How does that work?
Well, we get a list from Donna, and it comes, I think, through the prayers on Sunday morning, and we get a list, and it's just a list every Monday of prayers, that people that we should lift up or that would be helpful to be lifted up. And so I have a system that I keep that for a month, and then I either burn the paper or let it go. But quite often there's a number that come back that month that that need to be on there again. So I'm pretty faithful in lifting up everyone. Plus I have a bracelet. I do not have the beads like Ann Mangleson does, but I have a bracelet that I use rather than a rosary that I use every morning.
Yeah. That's kind of neat, Myla. How long have you been doing this?
Ever since 2010. That was a time when I had lost my parents within 9 months, and I was kind of in a depression, kind of
Sure.
down, grieving particularly, and so that's my system began to grow, and that's what I've done ever since. So that's 8 years or so. I sometimes have to. I don't get up well early, so sometimes I have to shorten it and do it some other in the day. But I think it was Al Brown, one of the ministers, had said to try and do your prayers at 5:30 in the morning. I could never do that. My husband might be able to, but I could never do that. So that wasn't on my list to do, even though I thought, well, that's a good thing to do, but
Yes.
no.
Myla, you've been a member at Hope for almost 40 years, and you've attended here longer than that. Can you tell us what this church has meant to you and your family?
It's been my spiritual home, both at work and for church. It really has been my spiritual home, and I've grown immensely. I like to say it's like little seeds. Everyone comes in here and there's a little seed and it's growing. It might not spark, but we want to continue to grow. We want to make sure that each of us are growing, plus our friends are growing and that we are outreaching to others.
That's terrific. Thank you. Do you have a special memory of things that happened here at church?
Special memory. I think I've covered a lot of things. Oh, I did not cover handing out the water with when the Pope was here. As I mentioned before, my husband's Catholic, and that the Pope was, it was a big deal.
It sure was.
25 years ago. It
Yeah.
was a big, big deal. And so there was a group of us women that suggested that we hand out water on our corner of Dayton and Bellevue and for the Pope. And it was a very, very hot day. And I know it was well appreciated because everyone was going to Cherry Creek, and there was a huge gathering at Cherry Creek.
Yes.
And so, yes, I do remember that.
I recall that it was a very hot August afternoon, and many of the people walked. And so by the time they got here, which is less than a mile from the Cherry Creek Reservoir, they were exhausted. And they needed water, and they needed rest, and they needed shade.
Yes, and so we provided shade and water and for them. And I remember my daughter was 13 at the time, and she was out on the reservoir listening to the Pope. It was quite an experience.
It really was quite an event.
Yes.
Tell us what you like best about Hope Church.
The people, the presence that were there, seeing eyes in a different way, because each one of us is different, but we are all so special.
Yes. Well, you've seen many things happen here and grow, and different missions and outreach for the community and things that we've done here at Hope. What would you like to see Hope do in the next 40 years?
I'd like to see our missions grow. I would like to see maybe helping with the homeless grow, the knitting of the hats, and maybe even mats for them. I'd like to see us grow. We have a great community, but I'd like to see us grow. Not only just here in numbers, but spirituality and
Well, Myla, we've talked about people and times and events here. Are there other memories you'd like to share with us?
I don't have anything that I think of. I do. My son, Daniel, was very young, and every year we put on a Christmas pageant.
Yes.
And that was my mother's favorite holiday. And my son was Joseph with the Christmas pageant. So that'll be kind of special for the family to know that he played Joseph. So yeah.
It's always fun to see the children participate in the
and that is
Christmas-
one thing that I always carve out. I'm kind of torn between traditional services and all, but I'll carve out to just watch the children because they do make me laugh and smile, and they're so special.
Yes. Well, Myla, thank you for sitting and telling us some of your memories of Hope Church, and thank you for your service with all of the different things you've done here.
Thank you
Thanks.
for asking me. Snow was added, the clouds were added. It was just the ark at first, and then she added the animals. And she'd come over here either morning or afternoon after work and get out her paints and brush it up, touch it up.
What was her name?
Debbie Penley.
That's beautiful.